Hello, friends. It's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, and it's been a while since I have done a day in the life video. And so I thought I would kind of show you what our life looks like on a normal weekday at this point at the end of summer, beginning of fall. We are back in the swing of school. The garden and canning season is starting to wind down, and so things are definitely changing around here. And I thought I'd show you what that looks like for us. On this day, I am actually suffering from a summer cold and I'm quite sniffly, and you can probably see it in my face. But the baby had given me an amazing night of sleep. For about 3 weeks, she'd been waking up basically hourly through the night. But the Lord blessed me with a wonderful night of sleep on this night, so I was feeling great. So in the morning, I was able to get up, have some tea in the dark and quiet. And then as soon as Hannah woke up, I got her changed and she joined me out in the kitchen. My job in the morning is to get my tea made and Adam's coffee made. I get some hot water for him because he likes to drink that in the morning. And then I just kind of wait while Adam is in the shower getting ready. If Hannah is awake, I'll feed her like this because it's a great opportunity for me to get her fed when there's not the chaos and the noise of everybody else in the house in the kitchen. But while I started feeding her, children started to wake up. I think as Adam is up in the bathroom getting ready, children hear him and they are really excited to see him in the morning, so they'll come down. As they come down, they are immediately hungry and asking for a snack. And I said, well, I will not make you a snack, but I'll go ahead and get breakfast started. So I had had some rolled oats soaking overnight with a little apple cider vinegar. I drained them and put them in the pot. I know that just oatmeal alone, it doesn't have protein that will keep them full. So I'm adding some extra eggs to the soaked oats just so that there'll be a little bit of protein in this meal. I'm also going to add 2 cans of this coconut cream because I know they're going to need some fat. If I just load my kids up on a bunch of carbohydrates without adding some fat and protein, they will be hungry again within an hour. So I've really got to make sure I'm getting some fat and protein in there for them. But this does need sweetened, so we added a little cane sugar and a little bit of blackstrap molasses. I'm sprinkling in a little bit of cinnamon, and then we're just going to get that all mixed together. I have to make sure that I break up all those eggs so that we don't have a whole cooked egg in the middle of our oatmeal. When you stir that around, you don't even notice the eggs. I probably could have added a couple more, and the kids wouldn't have noticed it at all. I love oatmeal days because as far as breakfasts go, it's probably one of the easier ones that I make. So I can get this on the stove and just let it kind of cook on low. And then when Adam got out of the shower and got all ready, he could come in and spend a little bit of time with us before he heads off to work. Every day is a little different. I find that Grace and Gabriel is our oldest son, Grace is our oldest daughter, seem to be the two that will actually set alarms to make sure that they see their father in the morning. Sometimes some of the younger boys will wake up because they're earlier risers. But on this day, it was just the four of us with little baby Hannah, and we just like to have a little conversation, talk about our plans for the day, things like that. And then it's time to see Adam off to work, usually a little bit before 7 or on some days around 7 o'clock. If the weather's nice, we like to go stand out in front of the house and wave him off. The kids have a cute tradition of chasing the car. They will run down the length of the fence and stand there and wave him off. As long as they can see the car, they'll just stand there and wave and then head back into the house. It's kind of chilly on this day, so I think that they're ready to get back inside and eat some of that warm oatmeal. Shortly after we got back inside, the little boys must have heard us through the windows outside and woke up and came down to join us. So everybody is starting to have some of the oatmeal. People are slowly waking up, getting those morning stretches out. And we need to fuel up a little bit before it's time to get outside and do the morning farm chores. So I very rarely go out and do the chores. It just depends. Some days I want to get outside for whatever reason, and I'll offer to do it for the children, and they'll stay inside and watch the little ones for me. But I'm typically inside getting those last late risers out of bed and making sure they get inside and get their breakfast eaten. The older children, my two older boys, handle the dog and cow chores. They go out and feed and water, clean any feeders and things that need to be done, move the cows to the appropriate pasture for the day. And my daughters typically handle the poultry chores, the chickens and the ducks, and feeding and watering them, and filling their duck pools and gathering the eggs. So once they get all of that done, then everybody comes back inside and finishes up breakfast because then mama needs to start rushing to get the morning work done. So, my first chore after everyone finishes breakfast is to wash the dishes. I enjoy this time. I prop my phone up and get a sermon going on YouTube. I have some favorite pastors that I really enjoy their sermons. And so I will listen to a half an hour sermon while I clean up the kitchen and wash the dishes. And then my next task is to get our coffee started for school time. I do allow my four older children to have a small cup of coffee during our morning meeting time at the beginning of school. And so I get the percolator plugged in and going for that. Then my next chore is always to kind of do some meal prep for the rest of the day. I had some tomato juice from a canning project that I was doing that didn't fit into a batch, and it was in the fridge. So I decided that I would turn it into chili for lunch, and I was going to go ahead and get that started. So besides pouring in that tomato juice, I needed to chop up some peppers. I just grabbed whatever peppers were sitting on the basket to be used up. 3 jalapenos ended up being maybe a little bit too much. It was really spicy chili, but the children still ate it and enjoyed it. But if I had to do over again, I probably would have only put 2 in there. I also chopped up an onion, and then I grabbed one of our pureed garlic cubes from the freezer and went ahead and threw that in the pot as well. Now I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of chili powder, and I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of cumin. To that, I'll also add a little bit of black pepper and some salt, and we'll get that all stirred up. But I also need to add a little bit of protein to this. I'm deciding to make this beanless chili on this day, but I do want to add some meat. This is actually our homegrown beef. Last year, we processed 2 heifers, and we decided to take the entire second heifer. And our butcher does commercial canning, so they will can it for us in these metal cans, and it works really great. So this is homegrown beef that I can just dump. It's pre-cooked, put it directly in the pot. I also had some leftover rice from the previous night's dinner. So I just figured if I put all of that in there and mix it up, I can get this on the stove and just let it sit on low while we're working on school, and it'll be a really easy lunch for us to have after we're done with all of our schoolwork. Now it's time for me to get ready for the day. I typically take my showers in the evening before bed, so all I have to do in the morning is just throw on my clothes, do my hair, brush my teeth, and then I'm ready to get the day going. So just checking my meal plan to see what I need to prep for dinner because I have a quick minute to get something done. I saw that we're having chicken pot pie for dinner, so I needed to run outside to the deep freezer, grab some chicken. I grabbed some pre-made pie crust that I had frozen that I want to thaw out, and I also got a pint of frozen lemon juice so that we can have some lemonade with dinner later on tonight. So all of that needs to get thawing. The children are working upstairs on their math. The older children are taking turns getting their showers in, and then their math courses are done via the computer. The lessons are taught for them on the computer. So they typically like to do their math before we begin our group schoolwork down at the table together. So that's one subject that they get out of the way earlier in the day. At least several of the children are used to kind of doing that, and they have the time in the morning after they get their outdoor chores done and they get their showers, they move on to their math. I'm just taking some time to do whatever laundry needs to be folded up, and then I start a new load in the washer. I take a couple minutes to just kind of straighten up our family room because that's where the little ones will be playing while we're doing schoolwork, and I want it to be cleared out because they play much better when everything is all cleaned up. And then the little boys, I'll make sure that they're dressed, I'll brush their teeth, I'll give them a few chores to do to just keep them busy while we're downstairs. At this point, I realize I haven't eaten yet because I can't eat oatmeal. So I was just grabbing some quick leftover meatloaf that was in the freezer, and I'm gonna try to wolf this down a little bit before the school day starts. And then my little guy hopped up and said he needed some water and needed to be taken to the restroom. So Mama's trying to get herself fed while taking care of all of these little ones. And we got it all done. I ended up getting to eat my little meal here after I took care of Benjamin. And I felt like we had a good handle on the morning and we could move on to the next tasks for the day. Before school can start, I need to get Hannah to sleep. And this is one of my favorite parts of the morning because I put her down in the master bedroom and I lay down on the bed with her and nurse her to sleep. It's just a little break. I can catch my breath. I typically get on Instagram and post some stories from the morning, whatever we were doing. Just kind of check my messages. It takes me about 30 minutes to get her nursed and down. And then as soon as she is down for that morning nap, it is time for me to start prepping for school. I like to give my children a snack at the beginning of our school time when we meet together. They'll have their coffee and a little snack, so I'm just chopping up a pineapple so that they can have some of that if they would like, and then just making sure to stir my chili and check on all my meal prep for the other meals that we need for the rest of the day. The coffee is done by this point, so I pour everyone a little cup. I make myself a fresh, hot cup of tea. I do not drink coffee myself, so at that point, we're ready to clear off the table. The children take whatever laundry that I've folded that day and put it away wherever it needs to go. We get our table all set up for our morning meeting time, and then everybody grabs their coffee. Our school day begins around 10 o'clock with a morning meeting. This is an opportunity that I take to address any concerns that I maybe have about the children's chores or the children's schoolwork or any family news that we need to talk about. And then beyond that, if there's a group lesson that I need to teach, I will do it at this point. On this day, the children just asked me if I knew any news headlines that I had read recently. And so I was just kind of going over some of those, and we sit and we chat. We talk about whatever might be on somebody's mind that they really feel like we need to talk about. I love this is probably my favorite part of our school day, and it typically lasts 25 to 30 minutes. During this time, the little ones are usually just playing in the family room where we can kind of keep an eye on them. And then I get out my planner after we're done meeting and I just go through the list and figure out what we need to work on next. So the child that needs me the most at this point is Levi. He is my first grader, and so he typically sits next to me, and I need to help him with reading the instructions for his work. The other children sit around the table. We do some group lessons, like this is a group Bible lesson that I'm doing with both of my girls and Levi. So we'll start with whatever group lesson that we need to do together, and then the children will break off to do their individual work. We all sit at the dining room table together and work, with the exception of David. My second oldest son, David, just prefers to be upstairs where he's less distracted and it's quieter, and I can appreciate that. So he works up there, and I just check in on him, and I have a task list for him so he can keep track of what he needs to do. During this time, Hannah usually gives me a lovely 2 hour, sometimes 2.5 hour nap. It's wonderful. But on this day, for some reason, she woke up after 45 minutes, which is probably because she slept so well the night before that she was already fully rested. So we were doing school with her on my lap. That is not typical. Usually she sleeps through all of school, which is just such a blessing. But on this day, it was fine. She was awake and along for the ride, and she ended up out in the family room with the little boys just playing contentedly, and it worked out just fine. So children will typically come find me if I'm not sitting at the table, if they need me to check work or if they have a question to ask. Otherwise, I typically try to stay sitting at the table so that they know that I'm there whenever they need me. During this time, I'm not just teaching lessons and wrangling little ones. I also am in charge of grading tests and maybe dictating spelling words for a quiz. At this point, David needed to recite a poem. He had to memorize it and was reciting it. And so my job was just to check and make sure that he was reciting it properly and had memorized everything. And so there are a lot of tasks that I have to do. And so just sitting in this spot and people come to me as they need me, that is what works really well for us. The bulk of everyone's schoolwork is done during that 2 hour period. And then I get to a point where children don't really need me anymore. They're mostly doing independent reading or work on the computer. So I can move to the kitchen and start getting the rest of lunch ready. Our chili is already done and just sitting on warm on the stove, but I decided to make some cornbread to go with it. So I needed to grab some whole corn from our buckets and go ahead and get that in the grain mill to grind down into cornmeal. I also ground down some soft white wheat berries, so I did a half cup of that wheat flour. To that, we're going to add 1.5 cups of that freshly ground cornmeal. We also need 1/2 cup of sugar. And then to that, we are going to add 4 teaspoons of baking powder. And that is the extent of our dry ingredients. We can get all of those mixed together and start adding our wet ingredients. So to my cornbread, I add 2 eggs and then a cup of whatever type of milk you want. I am using almond milk because we can't have regular dairy. We're just going to mix that together, and I'm being very clumsy because I'm trying to hurry to get this done. But we're going to get that mixed together and into the oven. While I was mixing this, my little one, Levi, asked if he could help. So I got my pie dish all greased up, and he wanted to finish mixing it together and help me get it into the pie dish. We're going to get that in the oven while we move on to the next task of the day, which just so happened to be grading a quiz that my son had finished. And so we're just going to check over his work and let him know what he needs to do to fix any mistakes that were made. And then we can move on to the next task. Hannah was getting hungry again by this point, so I took an opportunity to just kind of put my feet up and get her some milk while I got to watch my little ones play. I absolutely love watching my little guys play. It's just something so relaxing about watching them enjoy their toys. And then the timer on my cornbread went off, so I knew it was time to start getting lunch ready. And the children were getting hungry by this point. So I pulled out some apple butter that they could put on the cornbread if they don't want to dip it into their chili. And everybody kind of wants different things. Some people want a lot of chili, some people like cornbread, and some don't. And so I'm just getting everybody whatever they want to get their bellies filled here with this lunch. By this point, all of the older children are pretty much done with their schoolwork. If there's anything left to do, it's independent reading that will be done during nap time. They like to go up to their room and do that maybe while lying in their bed. I am starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's almost nap time. I just have a few more chores that I need to get done before everybody can have a little bit of a break and some quiet time. So, of course, I need to clean up from making lunch. I'm doing the dishes here. The other children are cleaning up our mess from school. I'll typically listen to like a YouTube video or podcast while I'm doing this cleaning, and it's a nice little break. Then it is time to get my little boys down for their naps. So I'm just setting up our family room. My rule is that any children that are under the age of 6 have to take a nap during nap time. It's usually from about 1 to maybe 3 o'clock. So I'm just getting them all settled down. I just get them nice and calm in a dark room. We have a fan on for white noise, and sometimes they fight it, but if I just kind of cuddle in with them and get them relaxed, they will eventually fall asleep because they really do need this nap. And mama needs this nap time too. I just need a little break. Everybody can be calm and quiet and get a little bit of rest. So, my expectation for the children that aren't napping is that they need to find something quiet to do upstairs or outside if it's nice outside. So, here Levi has playing with some of his little toys. He'll get in his bed. Half of the time, he might end up actually falling asleep during nap time too. Grace here has a craft out. She's doing some of this dot art, and they'll sometimes do knitting or sewing projects. They might read a book, play with some toys, or, like I said, go outside and find something to do. Miss Elizabeth here had offered to watch Hannah for me while I got the boys down for their nap. As soon as I get the boys down, now I can focus on getting Hannah down for her nap. It's too hard to do them all at once, so I do them in shifts like this. And thankfully, the older children watch her for me while I can get the little boys down. So she just took a little bit of time. Once again, I can just nurse her to sleep while lying in the bed. I'll typically post a little more on Instagram while I'm getting her to sleep during that kind of 30-minute window of time. And then once she is down, I can once again sneak away. The girls offered to watch her on the monitor for me so that I could run outside and work in the garden because sometimes the monitor doesn't reach all the way out to where the garden is. Lately, this nap time is like my only time in the day where I really have a chance to do projects like this, to go out and maybe do some work in the garden or to do a canning project. The older boys were helping me by getting some mowing done during nap time. They were going to mow inside of the property, the fence line, so that when Adam got home, he could do outside of the property line. But before school started during the summer, we would do a lot of our outdoor work earlier in the day before it got too hot. But now it's cooling down and we're back at school. So we have this little chunk of time during naps while the little ones are sleeping that we can maybe get out in the garden. You can see that my garden has been very neglected. The weeds are terrible, and that's just because school is the priority during this time of the year. And prior to school starting, canning was the priority. And so the garden work just kind of had to take a back seat. But we're still able to get these little harvests, and we're grateful for anything that we can pull out of the garden at this point. We have about a month more until the first frost, so we'll just see what we're able to continue to harvest. I have a little more time left before I know that the little ones are going to wake up, so I thought I would run down to the cellar. We have just been kind of putting canning jars on the floor of the cellar because I need to reorganize and put like things together, all of the fruit sauces and pie fillings and such, put them in the same spot. So I was just taking a minute when I had Levi there to help me, and he was handing me jars to get them a little more organized. It still needs more work. I need to order another set of shelves so that I can get everything truly organized because there's more canning to go in here and it is kind of overflowing. But we will get there. We'll get it done eventually. I have a little bit of time before more canning jars are going to be entering this space. Hannah's afternoon nap is much shorter than the one she takes earlier in the day. She's typically awake after 45 minutes to an hour, so I knew it was time to head upstairs because she would be waking up soon. And when I got upstairs, the girls had decided to make some chocolate chip cookies. My kids pretty much have freedom to bake whatever they like. I keep ingredients in the house so they can do that, and I really think that's a blessing that the children will bake things. It's one less thing that I have to do. At this point, around 4 o'clock afternoon, farm chores will be done, and then every day is a little bit different past the hour of, maybe 4 or 5 o'clock. Some evenings we have gymnastics or ballet or karate lessons that will get us out of the house at different times, and so dinner times will fluctuate based on the activities of the evening. Some days Adam works later than the others, so there really isn't a consistent routine or flow that I can show you past afternoon chores. So I think we'll probably end today's day in the life at this point. I hope you enjoyed this little peek into our life. As the weather shifts and it gets a little cooler, the work will definitely change a little bit. Morning chores are different. The times that we do things might change. There'll be a lot more snuggling by the wood stove and reading books versus doing outdoor work. So thank you for being here for this little peek into our life. We will see you next week with another kitchen work and preservation video. Until then, bye friends.